Hey everyone, and welcome to Dev Interrupted. My name is Ishai Biri. I'm the CTO at LunarB, and I'm filling in for Dan Lyons today. Some of you may have seen me from previous episodes, mostly of our labs. That's because I work a lot with our data team, and I'm exposed to a lot of the exciting stuff that we're doing with understanding the behaviors of developers, dev teams at large, using the huge data that we have. I'm happy to dive into AI today, the buzzword that everyone is talking about, and I have a special guest. So welcome Itamar Friedman, the co-founder and CEO at Codium. Hey, Itamar.
Hey, Shai. Happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Great to have you. Thanks for joining. So I always like to start with my guests with, give me a brief overview of your background, your journey so far. So you're now co-founder and CEO of Codium, but how have you started and how did you get here?
Great. I'll do it shortly. So I was a two-time CTO of VC-backed startups. So actually 20 years of R&D or CTO management and hacking. My last company I sold was acquired by Alibaba Group. Then I joined Alibaba Cloud. Alibaba journey was fascinating. I was there for 4 years. We did quite a few projects, but two products that I'm really proud of is one that we built an AutoML solution as part of Alibaba Cloud. It means that we automated machine learning ML model creation. And the second one was actually a B2C app that within 1.5 years of development from Israel, we reached to 10 million monthly active users. And it's growing nicely and already monetizing, etc. Before that, I did a bachelor and a master degree in a Technion, mastering in machine learning. Optimization was one of my favorite topics. And I worked on here and there a few startups, maybe and companies. Maybe worth mentioning that in the early days, I worked in verification, like in Mellanox, and actually it was hard verification. And then I worked on system verification in a company called Silk. So that's also relevant to what I'm doing today. So roughly speaking, that's my background.
Great. So you moved from more like the formal stuff of ML and verification all the way to the new fluffy area of generative AI. Can you tell us a little bit about Codium? What does Codium do?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, like the really early days of my career, if you can call it this way, was actually when I was a teenager and I had my first company and like 40 clients and quite a few employees. I'm mentioning it because my ever first employee is today my co-founder, Daddy Queredo. So we know each other for 25 years or more. But it's to say that I did like web, mobile, hardware, system, networking, storage. But my major is machine learning, actually even robotics. But almost in all of these, I had like algorithms involved and machine learning. So I've seen like algorithms from in the previous century, those of the 2000, 2010, and my master degree, I actually deal with a bit of deep learning. So I see like taking part in this amazing progress and evolution. I actually see it like a step-by-step progress. Yes, progress is going faster, and like we do have even growing gradient, but I do see it as a progress. So, for example, in 2016, there was already the GAN, the generative adversarial network, with generating a network that is in charge of generating content, and then one in charge of like verifying the content, etc. And then there was 2018, attention is all you need, etc. So I see it as a direct continuation of what we're seeing today. I wasn't surprised from the LLMs. One of the reasons I left Alibaba in the end of 2021, the beginning of 22, is because we developed with large language models. We even created a few foundation models, etc. At a certain scale, and we saw how powerful these models became. And if you can frame a problem as a language, not necessarily natural language, it could be like a DNA sequence, it could be a user usage of your website. If you can frame it as a language, large language model could get you really far with analyzing the content and also generating relevant content to that. And then I thought to myself that, hey, I as a R&D manager for 20 years, maybe it's time to tackle one of my biggest problems, which is code logic testing. similar to what I did maybe in the hardware area where we did formal verification. We had tools to because it was really expensive to tape out. It means
Yep.
like to send hardware to production and then like having bugs there. But in the software we have less fitting. And there are reasons. It's not just how much it costs to ship software. There's reason, and I realized that some of the reasons behind why we don't have good products and tools to check code logic can be mitigated or even solved with AI. And that's why when I left Alibaba and some ideation about exact vector and resting, and in July 22nd, which is almost 1 year, we're celebrating soon 1 year. I opened a company together with my partner Daddy Credo, and what we're doing in CodiumAI is building an AI coding assistant focused on helping developers reach zero bugs. Okay, the second part is the most important. Like there's a lot of code generation tools, but we are more like the adversarial actually. We are like helping to reach zero bugs, helping to verify that the code is generated as expected, that what you write, whether with an AI or not, is fits to your intent, etc. So that's what we do, and that's how we reach that through our background in machine learning and large language models, through our own pains as developers and managers.
Amazing. So you're deep in that space where AI and developers meet each other. And, as we prepped for this show, you said like maybe one of the greatest questions that's now hovering over our industries is, are we going to even have developers in 10 years? So what's your take on that? Is AI going to eat our lunch?
AI is going to eat our lunch, but probably we have much more lunch to eat in general. Okay, so first of all, it's very hard to predict, especially the future. But I'm still going to try to do that. I think like I think it's worthwhile separating between 5, 10, 15 years. And largely, I have like a general thought, general thinking process. I'm thinking this way. Like I like when I have a riddle, I like to think on like stream. So I have a question for us. Like think about a future. Imagine a future with no developers at all. Like can you think about it for a second? Like you ask any piece of software, anything that you want, like whatever, and get it from AI, even like software that was not written before or requires like a really high coordination between I don't know, different system between people, etc. So when I put it in a framework of I don't know, like 10 years, I don't see that. And I think that maybe the AI needs to rule to some extent, needs to rule the entire let's say ecosystem, needs to rule the agenda, and then that may happen. And that's why I said like maybe 15 years, it's another issue. Now the other way around, do you see a case like in 5 years that their AI is not taking a major part? It also doesn't make sense. Like you see how much it's doing right now, and you see all the effort that is being put into it, and like diverse effort. And I see like in 5 years, I think we're going to have like an intelligent software development stack that enables every developers, actually even creators, to be able to code and deploy and think about software, and as if they are enhanced, but also as if they have like 10 more skilled developers obeying to them to some extent. So that's how I see like the 5 year, and the 10 year is like where AI is doing a lot, and as software developers, we can reach really harder like tasks, like reaching Mars and whatever. And 15 years is like really hard to predict. It really depends where AIs take us, generally speaking. So that's how I see it.
So let's park this large question. I see where you're going with looking at the edges of this problem and understanding probably that it's never going to be an all or nothing. But now I'm a development manager, I'm a VP of engineering somewhere, or I'm a developer starting or in my journey. What are people asking? What is on top of mind now for people that are starting to see this AI in development happening?
Great question. So I do want to say like I think you should have two angels on your shoulders right now. Like so sorry, two advocates I meant, a devil advocate and an angel advocate. And first, I'm going to relate to the angel advocate. I'll elaborate a bit on what you just said. Like, I think listening to your angel advocate, you should be really open and being active about listening and adopting AI. At the same time, with the devil advocate, you need to ask yourself a few questions like, what is the transition? What is the best tool I want to try to use right now? Well, which one of them is actually mature, or if you want to be a bit more positive, which actually really fits my use case? So you consider them both, and maybe later we can put more focus on the devil advocate. But first, I'll focus on the angel advocate. So I think, like, really high level speaking, usually as developers, we have the setup phase, right? Like, it's either our setup environment, it's either our communication with the product team on what we're building, doing the research about how we want to accomplish things. Then there's like the implementation phase, right? You write your code, you debug, commit, you have the process with the development team, and then there is a deployment stage. Whether I'm including them not only like the CI/CD in the cloud, but actually even the feature flagging. Okay,
Yep.
and now my point here is that I think that for each one of these elements and there's sub elements, each part of these task or sub process, and there you will find a tool that is somewhere, or even a few between starting to half mature, half baked to mature. And what you can do is try to start with your pains. Try to look like I'm like breaking down my difficulties as a manager or as a developer, by the way. But let's focus as a manager for a second. And where are my difficulties? Look on this matrix. Try to think the pains that you think that you can imagine, that if you had like an intelligent like creature. Don't think about the product. Could it help? And then start looking for products. And most like a really good chance that you'll find something. And let's look at CodiumAI, if I may say, about like what we're developing. So let's say that you're a manager that you're really struggling with a reducing amount of bugs in production. And the way that you're doing it, I don't know, is like asking your developers or to adding more tests and increase code coverage. But at the same time, that code coverage could be a proxy metric to actually good testing, or even sometime vanity if you don't treat it correctly, and it's hard to treat it correctly. Then okay, you have a pain, and then you look for these words, and you'll find CodiumAI, because this is exactly, those are the pains we want to help with, like helping developers. If you look on the comments of our product, you see developers saying, I hated testing, now it's fun. And oh my God, I found 2 bugs in production, things like that. And like in the code that is already in production. So that's my main recommendation.
Think about AI as another intelligent being, and how can that apply to my problem? Is that like, what if I had another developer on my team that I would put just on these tasks? Because developers tend to be intelligent. If I'm looking for a general answer through intelligence, if I hired another developer and asked them to do this, is that a good initial proxy to think about what I can get from AI? Just more firepower with brains, probably cheaper than a developer. But is that like ideally on par with what an AI could give me?
Like, 1 word yes, 2 words yes, no, and 4 is yes, no, maybe so, because I'll explain. Like, I think AI, like, the core capabilities are relatively different in my opinion, and then it depends on how the product was packaged. A product that is AI empowered could behave like a developer, but it could do other things. It's like claiming, like, and just for the analogy, basically you can say that Google basically does 1 million people, 1 million developers work to go over the entire internet and index it or something like that. But it's impractical, right? Like it's not feasible, and to some extent. So it's yes, because some products are like, for example, those that are trying to like to be chatty or so, like imitate like talking to a developer, but some of them are really bringing like UX UI that is really different. So I agree that it's one way to think about it, but another way is that there are capabilities like indexing and looking things as a whole. And then one more perspective is that, you also care a lot about developer happiness. And maybe you don't care so much on AI happiness. Okay,
Yeah.
so right now, by the way, I do care. I'm just like considering that in the future. So I think that, for example, one of the reason, it's only one reason that CodiumAI, we decided to tackle code integrity, like code logic testing, is because I think right now, like developers are either do not do too much testing because they mostly they hate it, or because they like the creation and not like the verification, or they do testing and they do practice verification, code logic testing, etc., but they hate it. So either you don't do it and hate it, or you do it and hate it. And here you go. There is a tool that can help with developer happiness and spread love and with this best good practice. Okay, so to summarize this point, yes, it does make sense to think with this framework of I'm actually buying more developers and much cheaper, but I think it's more like I'm adding more additionally adding more capabilities that maybe developers couldn't do, especially things in large scale, just in time. You never go to sleep, and as well as doing this harder or the stuff that developers maybe wouldn't want to do. You still want the developers as the drivers, if you ask me, and not the AI. AI right now is more like the empowering. Okay.
Using that metaphor to imagine where I could use AI, right? If I'm stuck with resources or my developers don't want to do this, and we all hate verification, then I say, okay, what if I had a magic developer that loved it and was good at it?
Yeah.
But you're saying it goes beyond. Some skills or capabilities are very different. For example, having access to troves of data and being able to index,
right,
or work very fast on a large scale problem. Okay, so
correct.
Number one, you're saying look at your current pains as a practitioner or a manager and know that there's a new class of solutions bubbling up around probably most of these pains. So actively look for something. Sometimes what I'm seeing is, the co-pilots and other solutions, developers are not necessarily finding them because they have a pain. I know how to eventually write my web app or my database service, but I'm still using Copilot. So sometimes it's not a direct, like I'm not looking for something to ease a pain, but I find something cool that actually saves me time. And so how do you go about discovering those things that are not, where I'm not even aware or acutely aware of the pain?
Cool. So I think like, I know I'm like a bit generalizing here, but develop like R&D manager or director of engineering or whatever. Like, what's your purpose? What we're trying to aim, like maximum value, right, for the organization and the minimum time. So you're basically like maximum value, getting out maximum value from my R&D team to develop the product and the business. Yeah. In minimum time. So basically time, like spending time is a pain, for example. And I think pre Copilot, then you would spend a lot of time in searching in Google and Stack Overflow and things like that. It take you a lot of time to search and also combine searches. I think Copilot is basically disrupting that part. How do you instead of going to search on Google or Stack Overflow, etc., fortunately and unfortunately for different stakeholders, then you just search inside your IDE, but also like it kind of combined a few searches. That's what it's true. So it actually saves you a lot of time and it's a pain. The second thing is that for junior developers, if I may say it's subjective, then it's actually even increases your level. Like it's not only like help you with the search and combination, but actually choose for you the best one. And to some extent, if you're a junior, probably raise your level. So that's a pain, like two pains. Reducing time from if you want to make your software. But I agree that like maybe you wouldn't think about it directly. And this is why I also think, with all the respect, that Copilot is a really productive tool. But I think if you think it's a game changer, I think in 5 years you will think differently. That you will see like game changers too, like really addressing like again, like I know what I'm saying is like more like a vision. I'm not saying that right now CodiumAI helps you like guarantee that you have zero bugs. Like it's like Tesla zero emission. Not necessarily they reach, but they're progressing really nicely. So think about it. If you can know that you have zero bugs in production and how much fast you can move when knowing that you're being covered this way, I think that's a game changer. So again, I have a lot of respect to Copilot, like code generation. I think it's like really boost productivity. And maybe you didn't think about that as a pain originally because it's not that acute pain. But if you think about the two pains I told you, then I think actually you do find it like they are quite big, maybe not acute, and that's why it's fun and also magical a bit, right? Like as a developer, oh, I can't believe that AI is doing it for me, and it was original, like it was one of the first AI products. That's I think why we also love it so much.
Yeah. So if if I'm a dev manager, so there's looking for my specific pains and actively looking for solutions. What about like my developers and people on my team are probably looking for those solutions too, starting to use them. How do I become more proactive in not just finding something to help me with a pain, but also helping my team discover and start to use these? How do I? And we're going to talk about pitfalls in a bit, but even before,
Yeah,
like
I'm waiting
even
for
in the
it.
rosy area, how do I? It's one level to say, oh, I have a pain. Let's look for a solution. How do I enable my organization to go and jump on this and harness this revolution beyond just
Yeah,
looking for direct solutions? Is it
yeah.
like everyone try out things? Do I have to do a program? How do I approach this with I have 100 developers in my org. What now?
I have like a bit of a few perhaps generic suggestions, but I actually want to like kind of twist them towards the AI tools because I guess that most managers would know the trivial ones. Like for example, define how like in your core, do you want to be a first adopter, like early adopters, and want to try and you want to be in the front? Do you want to think like a mature? Do you care or ease of integration, or do you care about like how much of the pain it solves you? It's like so there's a trivial thing I just mentioned a few points, and I think they are worth like sitting and thinking about it. I don't think like more than 30 minutes or so, like a discussion between a few people. But twisting it, like thinking about like specific AI angle into it, is that AI is like a statistical creature. By the way, there is a lot of debate. Machine learning is like a nice framework around statistics, or two different things. I don't know if you know all these memes. I have some opinions, but it's not the topic. So allow me to say like AI is a statistical creature and like it doesn't necessarily give you uh, it depends on the product, but consistent answer. There is need different guardrails developed by the product owner, and it could, because of it's like that. It could work differently between two different companies, or two different code bases, or two different teams, for example, or so. It doesn't mean that it's going to be a big variance, but it could be. So what I'm saying here is that I think like I actually think that one of the things you need to look at how easy for me is to check it a bit, and you would like to check a few and see how well they work for you. For example, I heard one company trying for one quarter 13 tools and then choosing two, and they were really happy about it because it's like a lot of investment, but they said that they wouldn't necessarily pick the two that they thought about, and that was really helping them in a meaningful way that they couldn't think about it originally. So maybe that's an extreme. I'm not sure. I'm experiencing this like enterprise are using CodiumAI, like we like offer easy trial, and that's like the atmosphere right now. I believe. I think Linear B, etc. is like on that role right now. I hope easy to integrate, like, and just try it out. So I would just what I'm saying here is that with AI, do consider how easy it is to try it out, because it's not like a spec is written. It's going to be exactly like that. It's a lot about how it performs for you.
So you're saying be active about experimenting. Like, don't just say I'm going to find one
Right.
tool, experiment with tools. There's going to be variance. Maybe know that everything is changing so fast. So what you see now may not be what you have in 6 months. can I even afford not to begin experimenting? Let's say I'm not an early adopter. I have other priorities. It's not a huge pain I'm solving, but is it a risk or a material risk not to begin experimenting, not to have people on my team begin to look and use these tools? Am I going to be left behind or at a severe disadvantage if I wait for a year and then I'll see what bubbles up? I'll see what makes it into mainstream and then I'll adopt.
So we can take again the notion of having two extreme cases. Let's say that there are already, I think, starting to build, but let's say there will be AI tools that helps your team. Just we're talking an extreme case, just to like 10x more productive. Okay, and this means that your competitors are going to develop 10x faster if they fully on board, and you did not. Okay, that's an extreme case. On the other way around, if these AI tools are hard to try, hard to experiment with, and basically bullshit, then you waste your time and you defocus, and you're probably having a lot of pressure. So it's probably like somewhere in the middle, and as time progresses, it actually goes toward the first extreme. That's my opinion. So that's why, like, so far, we talked about like thinking about your pains, that they're there anyway, and do start experimenting with them. They become very good chance that some products could help you, even very meaningfully. But then as you get to use these products that you need a slightly different mindset, then you could keep progressing with more and more tools as time passes. So that's like how I see it. I wouldn't recommend skipping, because there's so many, like, I think like not too much time would take you to look on your pain, experiment a few. And that's my point here. Actually, I build up to, and I didn't say that, I think there are those tools that are really easy to try. So I don't think that efforts are so big and you shouldn't miss the opportunity. Again,
So
there's the devil advocate part, right?
So you're mentioning the downsides or the devil's advocate. Why not start?
Yeah, so I think, like, let's take one of the most dominant tools out there right now, like GitHub Copilot, as an example. Okay, so I heard from quite a few people. By the way, I personally use the tool and I love it. I know I'm the CEO, but I couldn't. For 2 days, I was actually programming. I don't do it too much. I couldn't stop myself this time. We're going to release some new thing soon, and I wanted to contribute. Right now, our tool is in the ID extension. We're about to connect also to the CI/CD pipeline, etc. So I love it. But I heard from quite a few people they're passing through the traditional cycle of, oh my God, this is amazing. Oh my God, this is actually ruining my development, to, okay, this is useful, but I need to use it carefully. And why do we have this cycle? It's because at the beginning, like, you see the magic of AI and you start like even adopting the way you develop towards being AI empowered, which is good. But then you fall into traps of, the AI suggested something that wasn't really fitting for your use case, and you're already so used to click tab and continue, and then you realize that you can like you can say AI will get better and better, but it's more than that. It's not like just the core capabilities of AI, it's even the UX UI. Like the UX UI right now of code completion not necessarily has the capability to really like 100% give you code that always work. We'll talk about it in a second. So, and then you learn to use it better. Then you go back to the driver and then you enjoy the tool. So I think, like, by this example, you can see that one issue that I raise right now is the way you use AI, and you need to work with your developers and yourself not to blindly trust it. This is obvious, but also not blindly. Let's start using after you experimented, and that's what the team that I told you that tried 13 teams and then moved to 2. They talked about each tool, like how it's the best way to use that tool, and like the way you need to start generating best practices around it. And then so basically I'm repeating back, like, it's a matter I'm repeating again what I said before. Like, it's a statistical product. You need to be aware of it. It requires different best practices. You need to be aware of it. These best practices are, for example, you need to consider like best practices related to seniors, to juniors, that might be different. Therefore, it also might introduce new problems maybe that you didn't think about. Like maybe right now, you're going to have much more code because your developers are going to create much more code. And then you have also much more maintenance. Now, how are you going to handle that? Either you bring another AI or you need to deal with it. So that's kind of part of the pitfalls. That's one of the reasons that in CodiumAI we first decided to focus on something that people know there is a big pain and they're really missing resources there and they don't like to do it too much. And when we focus there, because we saw that like it could be a standalone product that doesn't necessarily like need to change too much of your best practices. It just allow you to do more of them, of the best practices right now.
So if we dive into pitfalls, so let's say I'm proactive, I'm starting to experiment, maybe found some good tools to help with pains in my development org. I'm using AI to help me write code or to verify code or to, add some tests or automate UI out of Figmas, whatever. There's a bunch of interesting applications.
Totally.
What should I be careful of? Where can I get bit by the AI? Where's the danger? Except for I know, I have to change the way we work and adjust, but where are the things that I should really be afraid of?
The part that I repeat myself, I'll do it shortly, is that do imagine, like, if this AI tool is just nice to have, it's nice to have. But if it really like boosts productivity, what does it mean? Like, again, like I mentioned, the code of, if I help automating creation of code from Figma or in the code, and the developers are focused or half focused because they're actually like kind of accepting, taking a look if it's good enough and continuing, they put less attention into it, almost certainly. And then is the maintenance harder? Is debugging harder? And things like that. So that's one aspect of it. Now, we focus a lot now. I'm like kind of that you need to debug code that you maybe necessarily like put enough of like time, like a human brain on it to, and now it's harder to find the place to understand it. Maybe you need another AI, but it's not like right now the topic of just exact specific issue. But I want to zoom out for a second because almost all the examples that we said is around the implementation part, and I want to close like a circle, going back to what we talked in the beginning about pains. You have the setup of everything, and you have the implementation, and then you have the deployment. So I want to like give you like example of two risks, if I frame the term correctly, coin it correctly, in the setup and deployment. Let's say that there is imaginary a product that helps writing specification, but product specification helps writing PRD. And now the product people and with the developers, like let's say it's like a PRD, like almost on a technical, they're working together and they're using that assistant. It uses biases. That's how these product or LLMs are trained. So basically, it's like bias you towards the trivial stuff, towards like converges you to maybe other product that existing because it was trained from somewhere else. Okay, so like the fact that statistical, like you need to have like a product that maybe doesn't drag you to the trivial solution. It depends on how much creative you want to do, how much the mission in the part.
One risk is that the outputs of AI, at least in the generative mode, and this could be around how I implement the code, but also how I spec it or whatever domain I'm using it, is naturally going to go with the common, well-versed solutions or specifications or like some kind of a lower common denominator because it's trained on a lot of data and it's going for what's common in the data. That's interesting.
Yeah, it could. It actually can help you to be creative, right? When we see it with ChatGPT and other tools, but I'll get to that in a second. It could be mitigated with a good product. I don't want to like we now can
do ideation process for a startup to be aware of. To be
exactly. So
we know that this is a tendency of AI.
Right, exactly.
These kinds of models, they're going for the common data that is dominating their models.
The common denominator.
Be aware of that.
Yeah, that's how they're trained. So I want to say that a good product around AI, like a company providing a product, could try to mitigate it. But take a look, like being aware of it. If they don't, it's going to create that. And now going to the other side of the software development lifecycle, the deployment, same thing there. Like let's say you use some tool that actually helps you. Let's say that on the deployment, you have the observability tool, but you also maybe have an automated deployment. There are different risks if statistically one of these models are incorrect, right? Like if you have a problem with observability and event is being raised to a human right now and this year to be reviewed, then if you have like a false positive or something like that, false negative, okay, that could be handled, as well as the overall precision and accuracy is good. But what happened if you deployed something wrongly? So I would be careful, like think about what's the worst scenario, what could it be? And sometimes the worst scenario might be worth it of how much it could automate and help you. But maybe you can even think to mitigate it with an additional wrapper of your own that the tool or the AI could not think about it, but because it's a wrapper, it's like some additional blocker or check that they could not imagine would be useful specifically for your use case. So you can think about it yourself and implement that.
So what I'm hearing is think about what happens if the AI is wrong, because that
right.
The shape of being wrong is different between AIs and humans. Use some think about what the outcome of being wrong and then how you protect against that. Sometimes trusting AI in a place where the cost of being wrong is too much, you need to put some protection. And it's right. I agree.
Like,
it's different.
Think about the worst case scenario.
Yeah. Not that humans aren't wrong, but we are well versed with how humans get wrong. We're not. This is a new area. What Great about point. Adversarial risks in AI? Like some ways where AI can be manipulated or leveraged to harm me in a intentional way.
Let's give an example just for those listeners that are not well aware what is adversarial. So, but my point is going to be that I think like in software development, it's relatively rare right now. You'd need to be aware of it, but try to think if it's possible for you. Let's say that you're building autonomous driving software and with cameras and everything, and now you're driving the car, let's say level 4 or whatever, like autonomously, and you were trained on all the data that exists in the world that was available to the company, to the team that is training the models. What happened if somebody, for example, some pedestrian holds a huge screen and it's right now it's working, like it's showing like some semaphore or some sign or something like that, and you can actually cause the car. Maybe it even shows you a right turn where there wasn't any right turn. What could happen? Like that's an adversarial case. Like most probably, like they didn't see this case. By the way, I'm not saying that they're not aware of it, and probably they're trying to train against it, like being active, proactive, and having an adversarial model or adversarial data within their data set to train a generative or the analysis part of the AI. So having said that, but it's still, there is an option to create adversarial events. Okay. And then, but there are many more cases.
Recently, there's a talk about, like, I can put up some malicious libraries on NPM or PyPy, and then put up some data that will cause generative AIs to recommend code with these libraries. Now I've basically, it's like we got 1,000 Stack Overflow's article answers with bad code that is intended to harm people that use it. So I'm using an example AI code, and it's going to import a library that looks legit, but is actually malicious.
Yeah, amazing example. So I'm repeating just for the sake. Like, let's say that I want to create damage. I'm creating some library. Somehow I bypass the filters of those that training the AI models and being injected into their into the training, and then that will be suggested automatically. So two things. I think, like, first of all, it's already happening with humans, right? To some extent. Even worst case, in the worst case scenario, it even like unintentionally, because like for J or whatever. Sorry, I forgot exactly like all the examples. So it's already happening, and I'm not sure it's so easy to make it worse. But having said that, I think like you almost always like always want to have checks and balances, like almost everything you do. There is a reason that you code and you test. You do a product, but you collect data to give you feedback if it works. So my suggestion for it, and even by the way, I just want to give like more developer example. Probably use some cloud provider, but also cloud observability tool that it actually is not provided by the cloud provider. For me, it's unintuitive if you think about it. For why CloudWatch or whatever by AWS is not better than ABC. And the reason is that there is a good a reason that one is focused on actually checking problems in AWS, and maybe they don't want it's not their focus. So I think same thing here. Like if you're afraid of you want to use some tool that you think that's so useful for you, but also afraid from consequences, then also consider using the adversarial one. Like just fits CodiumAI, like code generation and code integrity are two different tools. So that's my suggestion. And again, lastly, I would say, what's the worst case scenario? Like for what you said, the worst case scenario is almost as inhuman. So basically, what I need to make sure is humans do not and inject best practices that humans do not accept Gen AI code without actually reviewing it or something like that. That's I think for me it's not such a big risk if you reference it to what exists today.
Maybe to close out the pitfalls or the dangers, not just of using a generative AI, but also again, I'm thinking about engineering manager that is starting to foray into this area. There's so much hype today, hyper hype. There's even just starting to experiment or looking for tools for my pains, or moving from 0 to 1 in how we use AI in our development organization. With so much noise happening today, how do I remove the risk of wasting time just because of all the noise? How do I cut through the amazing hype that's happening right now and actually go to things that are real, that actually give value? Because everyone, and their cousin are doing AI tools right now.
Yeah. I think that if we were talking about half a year ago, then I would say that if you want to use them, you'd probably be the very early adopter. But I think that right now, the things are moving so fast and the usage is so fast. It could be a new tool could have us 100,000 developers in a month, joining and trying and the tool and actually using it. And if you see that the reactions of the developers, usually dev tools have stars, not GitHub, of the product itself, comments, issues, open issues, closed issues. You can look on all these things, even if it's only half a year or 3 months. You probably see a lot of companies and developers already trying these. So I think to add to what I said is that you almost always don't need to be the first one. And very probably that someone with your domain or even a friend to try that product. Having said that, I'm still holding my position that that will help you to choose between a lot, but still you need to experiment to check it works for you. Even in the code generation area, it's our sister market, we're in the code integrity, then there you have 10 tools. Well, it's not only Copilot, there's Code Whisperer by Amazon and others even. So could work differently.
If I want to save some time and not go for all of those, again, amazing array of solutions out there, so I should gravitate towards the ones that are already showing some traction, usage, reviews, right. And that's a way to look at fewer candidates, a little more established. Again, this could be 3 months more established, but either the large companies anything that OpenAI does, or GitHub, or in every space there's going to be 1 or 2 leaders. Look for the traction and then follow that.
Yeah, unless you define yourself as a really early adopters and it's fun or important for you. So if I summarize this, it's, hey, there's so many AI tools. Some of them are better and here and there. Some of them are different. Some of them have better buzz, etc. Think about your pains. there's a very good chance that if you have a serious pain, there is an AI tool for that. Focus on 2-3 pains the most, if not even one. Go do the research. You probably find a few tools. There are some fields that aren't too many, like code integrity. I think maybe like there aren't many. It's a really hard task to check code logic, but in most areas, there are quite a few. Like code generation, you'll find 10, and documentation you will find, and PR review, etc. Think about what's your biggest pain. Research, check the comments, check issues, check usage, and see those that are comments or companies in your domains and using it. Choose 2 or 3, experiment, because it could be different for you. I don't think all of this, it should take more than 1 week. If you decide that ease of use is one of your decision criterion, and I think one of the great things about AI tools that many of them are really easy to use, like ChatGPT or so.
I know a lot of dev managers are asking this. They're asking us, wondering what your thought is. My developers are starting to use Copilot or some other code generation tool, or for reviews, or any of the domains. How do I know that it's helping beyond developers saying, "Oh, this is great"? How do I measure the impact of using? Let's take a simple example. We've deployed Copilot in some of the org. How do I measure the impact? Is it really helping? Is it imaginary, or is it small addition to our productivity, or a large one?
Amazing. So I think different AI tools, it's a great point. I think different AI tools and products, it won't be the same measure, like the metrics. For the different one will enable you to have more concrete or less concrete metrics. Like for example, with Copilot, you can actually see what they're publishing in their like papers, etc. And you see that they actually mostly focusing on developer happiness, and they claim that, and I'm not saying it's not correct, like they claim that this is like research that's the most important thing for eventually boosting productivity and everything. So there is a reason, because it's hard for them to measure something else. But if, for example, you look on CodiumAI, then first you can see how much you increase your code coverage, or more importantly, like a metric that we suggest, it's called behavior coverage, because we think that code coverage could be a proxy, and again, sometimes mistakes is vanity. And you can really measure like the behavior coverage. You can even measure how many bugs were deployed every cycle or so if it goes down. So it really depends on the tool, and I do really suggest to choose to check what's your metric. Well, in those cases that it's actually developer happiness, then you probably will add this tool if your developers are asking it for, because you want to make them more happy. But for others, maybe you're willing even to pay more because there's more concrete metrics.
Yeah, developer happiness and experience is very important, but it's a lagging indicator, and it's also a little like removed from the actual, like, what's the reason they're happy? Is this because of Copilot or something else? So you're saying there hasn't, well, like not a natural thing to measure that directly sees the impact, at least not something that's obvious.
I'm saying it depends on which tool. Like it could be really different. If it's a tool helping you in code integrity, then you can have concrete measures. If it's a tool that helps you to write your Jira tickets, then it's harder. But maybe even actually you could have some label that people can mark for you on how complete it is. Okay, if it's a Copilot, maybe they did a job and tell you that it's happiness. So it really depends.
For closing, maybe we go back to this 10-year question, and let's try to dig a bit in. When we're talking about, will we be developing software, or will we have developers in 10 years? You suggest that we look at the edges and say, okay, there's probably no future with no devs and no future with no AI in dev. But let's sort of take that apart. If you look at the range of key activities and skills developers are doing today, what is obvious that is going to be replaced or heavily impacted by AI? Which are the areas that you think are the easiest for AI to solve and remove most of the human labor from?
I think like it's kind of like going to raise everyone up, to be frank. Not necessarily replace. I'm probably wrong here, but probably something could be easier and will be replaced. But general notion, I think like everything, like juniors will be like tech leads would be able to influence more the juniors, because they will have AI tools where they can put their guidelines and suggestions, and that will be impacted. It's part of the thing that we're working on, impacted on how the junior works. It's also a dangerous bias, but not that way. We have to finish very soon, so I won't dig into it. But I think it will lift everyone. To be frank, I know I'm probably missing, and some jobs are going to be replaced or dismissed or need less of them. But I think like more people will be able to code. Juniors will be able to do more. Seniors will be able to influence more and deal with much more complicated tasks. DevOps, like people will be able to orchestrate much more and solve problems much faster, etc. And so I don't necessarily like. But by the way, I do think that developers would be able to do much more in DevOps than they could do before with AI tools. So you can say that supposedly you DevOps people will disappear. Rather, I think that maybe you'll need less, but they would also be able to deal with much more complicated things. So again, I'm talking about like the 5 years more towards, and the 15 years is a totally different game.
What you're saying is there are not like skills or professions that are going away. It's more like everyone could level up, and the power or the outputs that even a junior could wield, if they're well versed in using those AIs and prompts and whatever, the entry point is higher.
Yeah.
What are the things that you think are impossible or very hard for AI to, again, 5 years from now, to tackle in the dev world?
Human to human communication. Of course, it will actually help us in human to human communication. There will be tools that helps product managers to talk with engineers. Like you mentioned, the Figma to code. It's actually then now a product manager can push, maybe we'll be able to push code to production, etc. So, but still, I think like converting product concept into the technology, being in that point, like again, AI will help you build architecture better and give you more architecture ideas. But in general, product manager, I think that there is a lot more to go on the reasoning because it's also involve a lot of intercommunication between people. And the second thing are, especially where the programming task or whatever DevOps or is very unique for a specific company. Okay, you need like the AI to reach really high levels to be able to deal with that. So it's either on the wrapping everything, imagining, leading, and it doesn't mean that you won't have like additional agent that do a lot of tasks for you, but you need to manage it, and the really complicated stuff. That's I think like where AI would be hard for in 5 years to reach.
Amazing. Itamar, thanks so much for joining us. This was a great conversation. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.
Thank you so much for hosting me. I really had fun. Thank you, Shai, and the listeners.
So everyone, thanks for listening. Please take a minute to rate and review our podcast if you haven't done that. Really means a lot to us. And we'll see you next week.